As I was preparing the homily for this Saturday-Sunday weekend, the readings reminded me of a story I heard when I was a parishioner at St. Anthony's Church in Hubbard's many, many years ago. It was in a homily that was given on the same readings that we are hearing today. It went something like this. There is one thing you will probably never see. In fact, I think this can most assuredly be guaranteed. And what do you think that is? It is a trailer hitch on a hearse for hooking up the U-Haul trailer with all your earthly possessions as you take it all with you. A funny comment for sure, but it has such a primordial spiritual truth to it. We really do become attached to the things we have accumulated over the years. And our readings today all have a common connection. When I started to write this homily, I went through many different versions because I found out very quickly that greed has a lot to say and a lot to be written about. Namely, how we are connected to the things of this world. And we find it difficult to let go of them. We struggle to hang on to our possessions. So how do we deal with this overpowering human behavior? Bishop Robert Barron, in one of his Word on Fire segments, broke open the readings for today to offer some insights. Firstly, he said, is detachment. The need to detach oneself of the goods of this world. It has nothing to do with a hatred or a criticism of this world, or even a puritanical spirituality of flight from this world. But it is, he said, to wear the goods of this world lightly. To wear, W-E-A-R, the goods of this world lightly. Yes, to enjoy the things we have, but not to the extent that we have great difficulty parting with them. These things of the world are wonderful as they are, but like all things in our physical time and space, they crumble, they decay, and eventually they just disappear. And why is that? Well, it's because they are not our ultimate good. You see, all the readings today conclude just that message. If we take them in order today, the first reading from Ecclesiastes identifies King Solomon, who is in his time of this passage an old man, and he's looking back on his life. He has had it all. He's had riches, he's had power, the trappings of beautiful clothing, of palaces, and most probably fame. But now he says, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Everything is there for only a short time, and then it is gone. Nothing of this world lasts forever. Have you ever heard of somebody who dedicated their whole life to building up a business through hard work, long nights, stress, only to see that work eroded by those who inherit the business, and eventually it just disappears? The only way to deal with this is becoming detached. And we know in our heart of hearts, nothing in this world will last forever. Take it in, yes, indeed, but know, too, when to let go. Bishop Barron says, It's like living in the moment. The true good belongs to a higher world. Now, Paul's letter to the Colossians today, he says to his brothers and sisters, see the things that are above where Christ is, not what is on earth. The true world is God. We too must learn to detach in this reading. Keep your gaze focused on Christ. All else, including greed, is idolatry. He says all people must be renewed because Christ is all and in all. A very powerful statement. And we must be vigilant and remain steadfast, always on guard, understanding the reality of what is true and everlasting. And the gospel today has words of warning too. Have you ever heard of families who have been torn apart by disputes, and it ends up that lawyers and courts make the decisions for them? We see that in the opening sentence of the gospel today, like the two brothers who are having a squabble over the family inheritance and how they want to divide it up between them. See, greed is not easily defined and comes in many forms. It can become addictive when people are clinging to things just for the sake of having them. The parable of the rich man in today's gospel is indicative of the addiction to more and more and more accumulation of things. In this case, it is all about barns. If you can believe it, barns. He wants bigger barns. For what? To store more and more and more. More crops and more goods. He has to have the space to put it somewhere. And the rich farmer is becoming imprisoned by his behavior. And when does it stop? When is there enough? The question is there ever enough? And in the case of this rich man, what is his life truly all about? If this is all he can show for years of labor, then what has he in fact gained? He is so attached to worldly goods that he is blinded to the point where he cannot detach from the life that has left him essentially joyless, with no real destination in sight. He has been able to detach from God. He's been able to detach from those that helped him to get to where he is, but he didn't have any gratitude for all those people. And God says to him, "You fool, this night your life is being demanded of you. All that he has toiled for is now, and always was, just something temporary. His barns will eventually rot and decay, and the wealth that he has hoarded away will be enjoyed by someone else." The same words we hear in Ecclesiastes. Jesus tells us a man's life cannot be made secure by what he owns, even when he has more than he needs. And this rich farmer is a fool, not because he's wealthy or because he saves for the future, but because he appears to live for only one thing, himself. When the rich man talks in this parable, he talks only to himself. And the only person he refers to is himself. What should I do? I have no place to store my crops. I will do this. I will pull down my barns, and I will build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and goods, and I will say to my soul, "Soul, you have ample goods for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But the rich farmer has not grasped the idea that no matter how much he accumulates, it will still never be enough. Now, that is the downside of the way he encounters life. So, what could this farmer have done to enrich his relationship with God? The answer is not complicated. It is really quite simple. He just had to be thankful, to show gratitude and humility for all the good things bestowed upon him, starting with God, who blessed him with good crops, sharing his wealth with those who worked with him in the fields, that did the planting and did the harvesting. You see, he never could have done this alone. He could have, instead of storing up his crops, looked around him and said, I will give my access to the poor. I will help those in need. But knowing that he could never rely on possessions to secure his life always seems to elude him. He was truly blind to the fact that his life is not his own to secure, and that his life belongs to God, and that God can demand it back at any time. So what can we learn from this parable today? Well, like the rich farmer, we are tempted to think that having large amounts of money and possessions stored up will make us secure. But sooner or later, we learn that no amount of wealth or property can secure our lives and insulate us from the ravages of life and time. No amount of wealth can keep our relationships healthy or our families from falling apart. In fact, wealth and property can easily drive a wedge between many families. So here we sit in the 21st century, and are we still obsessed with the idea of accumulating more and more possessions, as if our life depends on how much we can acquire? We need to ask ourselves to what extent we place security in material things. It is good for each of us to humbly pray and to ask God to show us what that looks like as we continue our life's journey. We require the gift of wisdom when we allow our priorities sometimes to split out in other directions. We can become distracted by taking our gaze off God. It is only by our relationship with Jesus that we can discover who we truly are and be people of genuine discipleship. The things of this earthly life can never truly fill our hearts with love and peace and joy. A heart without God is void. It becomes this bottomless pit. And no matter how much you try to fill it without God, it remains empty. Professor of philosophy, Dr. Peter Kreeft at Boston College, put it this way. He said it's kind of like this. It's kind of like trying to fill the Grand Canyon with a bag of marbles. Can't be done. And because all that we are and all that we have belongs to God, and through that alone, our future is secure beyond all measure. We can never fill the voids in our lives with earthly things. Be true, in this life, we do need some earthly things, but we have to learn to discern the difference between God and the things of this life. To fill the emptiness that we have and may sometimes feel within our hearts and souls is never possible except through God. It is only through the hope and the love that we have with God and the longing for his love for us, can we be filled with everything to experience the joys of this life, true, but more importantly, the joys of the life yet to come.